You got to love it here in the city. Our heart beats stronger.
Free socks.
The NHL playoff picture is still up in the air, but here in Winnipeg, fans are confident the arena will echo with the sound of white noise again.
Free socks.
Let's go! Go, Jets, go!
Winnipeg is back in the big leagues and over the moon.
Welcome back to the landing strip, brought to you by From Financial. And first time we're going to be talking about a loss in some times. The winning streak ends at 11 after the Winnipeg Jets drop this back-to-back versus Nashville 2-1. And I'm really curious to see what our audience takes of this game, because I think this is one of those games where I think it would be really easy to find the bad, and there was a lot of it. But I also think there was still some real quality stuff going on, especially at 5-on-5. Despite a lot of the puck handling issues, a lot of the passing issues, structurally, I thought the team was pretty good. I thought Eric Comrie was pretty good. But before we get into that, let's bring in my boy Mikey. How you doing tonight, Mikey?
You know, bit of a mixed bag tonight with that game. Surface level, you don't want to feel good about it. You know, losing to a division rival's never good. Losing on the road sucks. And it just, especially to a team that you know that you're better than. But weirdly enough, I didn't come away from the game feeling too awful. There's a lot of stuff still kind of within there that I saw that, you know, I can understand why it's happened and where it's coming from. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the chat feels about this, how our callers feel about this, and yeah, let's break it all down.
I see the humor early. I see the chats bring in their sarcasm. Over on YouTube, Turd Ferguson says, this team will never win 12 in a row. I don't know why I even bother. And T. Will says, sell the team while it's still worth something. Harjivana Parwana says, we in this, but before we begin, let's make sure Mikey's PC has an ice pack on it. We're going to try today. We took some time this afternoon to really try and sort some stuff out on our end. We think we found a level. You let us know if there's something we could adjust. But my big takeaway, I'll ask you first because I'm pitching it to you. What were your big takeaways leaving this game versus Nashville?
So a lot of people either put way too much emphasis on the schedule and the travel and how much, you know, it's so tough. And I think sometimes, though, we swing in the opposite direction a little too far when you kind of bring up what's going on. And because, like I pointed out on social media today during the game, that it was really evident by the way the game was going, especially it started, that the Jets had played last night. You could just see it. They were skating through mud. They were tired. They weren't crisp. Their timing was just off. And on a team that predicates itself on, you know, speed and timing, if you're a little bit off, the whole thing looks just like a fucking train wreck, right? But when I point that out on social media, people jump right into, well, everybody has travel. Everybody gets back to back. There's no excuses. It's like, yeah, I know. It's not an excuse. That's not to say the only reason we lose games ever is because of travel. But when they played last night and you could, like, they looked fucking tired, that's what happened, right? They're still human beings. They're still people, even though they're elite athletes. They looked tired, but they still stuck to their structure, right? They still stuck to the way that they're supposed to be playing with their system. It's just that they couldn't execute, which I'm honestly just chalking up to exhaustion.
Yeah, I think structurally the Jets did a lot of fine things in this one. As far as I didn't find Nashville at 5-on-5 that dangerous. Now the
No.
specialty teams, that's a whole different conversation. I really do think the specialty teams both units were kind of a negative for the Jets in this one that really tipped the scale.
Agreed.
But at 5-on-5, we saw that sound defensive game, and when there was breakdowns, Eric Comrie, man, 910 save percentage with an under 500 record for a league minimum goaltender. He
Right.
has sure been worth it. That save, I'm still blown away. He catches Forsberg on that back door.
How?
Might
How?
might be might be him making up a little bit for Forsberg's first. I think that's one you want an NHL goaltender to have
Yeah.
off that lost draw. Ryan O'Reilly beats Adam Lowry in the circle, and Forsberg rips a shot quick. Um, and then on that second goal, I think this was a tough night for the captain on both goals. Obviously, a face-off's a 50-50 thing, and he's the best face-off man in Winnipeg. He loses that draw, there's a quick strike. But then on that power play goal, too, he gets it stripped behind the net. Neil Pionk follows him behind the net instead of having the net front,
Yeah.
and things break down in a hurry there for an easy goal back door. But yeah, I thought they were structurally fine. Trying to move the puck was a huge issue tonight, and I do chalk that up a lot, like what you're saying. I see what Choices is saying over on Twitch. He says it was a logical spot for a loss, but arriving late and a back-to-back, but no excuses. The one thing that's even tougher in the NHL these days than the back-to-back is the 3 and 4, and you had both of those in play for this game.
Yep.
Especially after winning 11 straight, I do have a lot of trouble beating up on that too much, just knowing the situation they were in going in. And they did look like a tired group. When you see just how many misplays, like, especially early, Sandberg has those two passes in the D zone up to the wall that just completely miss. And it wasn't just him on this night, it was happening everywhere, just pulling for examples. The Jets have a 3-on-1 late in the third, and Ehlers goes offside. Like, there was just so many mental lapses throughout this one that cost them opportunities, and they still hung around in it. All that being said, I thought UC Soros was strong in this one when there was quality looks. I thought he matched Comrie and then some on some of those looks. But the big story, I think, for me, and you're seeing it all over both of our chats right now, Jay Pick says PP needs to step up. Pick Papa says whose PP is to blame. Over on YouTube, Kim Sawchek says what happened to our power play, and that power play we've just become so ingrained on it in a game like this specifically, where when the Jets would have down games like this, that power play was able to elevate them, score one or two, and it was the difference for this team. They're now, 0 for 16, I believe I just saw Choices put over on Twitch, since the game before Four Nations. And it does look like a stagnant group right now. What are you seeing from the power play? And what are you hoping kind of unlocks what we were originally seeing?
Yeah, they're not moving anymore, which is what made the power play so dangerous to begin with. The fact that you couldn't deal with the motion. And at no point during the run where they were absolutely just crushing teams on the power play could you ever just stop to find where the puck was, because by the time you did, it had already moved to the next guy and there was a shot off. Right now, they're not moving the puck. They're standing still. They're looking for just side to side passes. They're trying to get the defense and the goalie going left to right, as opposed to trying to pull them in with the motion like they were initially. So, I don't know if that's I don't know if it's a concerted thing where they've decided, hey, we're going to try a different approach right now. If it's just that they're tired and they haven't played together for a while, and they're just starting to get that back up. I'm not really sure where that's coming from, but right now it's still, and you can't be still on the power play with this group. Otherwise, it ends up looking like the old Jets power play, where it was pass back to Bufflin for a shot, pass back to Bufflin for a shot. It's great when the talent can win out sometimes, but eventually it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, I'm seeing a more stagnant group that reminds me more of like the previous year's power plays than not. And I'm seeing a group that seems to be, because of that lack of movement, they're trying to force those passes to those high danger areas. And when you think of a power play, you have the extra man. So you're trying to create an odd man scenario where you can take advantage of a defender, right? And when you do start to settle for those outside looks, like there was a few times today, it felt like the Jets settled for one-timers that weren't from a dangerous area because they weren't able to create anything else. And I do think the movement has a lot to do with that. I do think settling and trying to force things has to do with that. They, like we talked about yesterday, they weren't going to go on that tear the entire year, but it is obviously a frustrating time when you're 0 for 16 and not able to tip the scales a little bit here. The 5-on-3, having two back-to-back games with
Yep.
1 minute 54 plus seconds of 5-on-3 has been the spot that's really kind of bugged me. And I think the Jets have it right. On a 5-on-3, you do want to play the box plus one and you want to try and get shots.
Yep.
One little tweak I would make personally, looking at how they're set up, when you go to a box plus one, it's your two high guys that kind of get to make the movement, and you're looking to get shots through or to create an opening for that slot shot or to get pucks to the net and have those two guys beat a defenseman for rebounds, right? Those are kind of the things you're trying to do with a 5-on-3. And I think they made it too easy today with being kind of set in that box and not. I don't think you want a ton of movement on a 5-on-3, but it was almost like standing still and just trying to get things through and not forcing that triangle to have to adjust very well. That being said, I do think Saros made a couple big saves there. One little tweak I'd like to see on that 5-on-3 is I would simply just swap Ehlers and Connor's spot and have Connor in the high slot and Ehlers as like the point guy. Just because Ehlers on that first PP, when it's been used and working, he's the movement guy, right? He's the one trying to pull guys away before getting it over to someone open. Whereas Kyle Connor's a shooter. He's not as gifted when it comes to creating in that form and forcing guys to move with him before he passes. He's that finisher.
Yep.
So that's one tweak I would like to see. I also wouldn't mind. I mean, we saw that first unit get both full power plays essentially the last two games and not create a whole lot. I liked what Cole Perfetti did when he got out there for the 10 seconds, being able to use his passing ability and IQ to get a sauce pass across to Vlad, which probably was the best opportunity on that power play. Unfortunately, goes off the post and doesn't convert. But those are some of the tweaks that I'm thinking about watching what I'm seeing right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I can understand the initial want to have Connor in that spot, right, because of that shot. But like you said, the power play has worked the best when Ehlers has the ability to kind of move around with the puck. And like on the 5-on-3, like you said, you want to do that box plus one, but you don't have to be completely still, right? You can have the entire box shift and move around, right, to try to find those open angles a little bit more. And right now they're not doing that. Right now it looks like they're at practice with guys in stationary spots for the passing and then the shot on the goalie. So it's just, yeah, like you said, I think they're squeezing the stick a little bit too tight. They're maybe overthinking it a little bit, and they're just not going back to what made them successful. So it's one of those things where when you get in a little bit of a hole, right, you try to maybe do too much to get out of it, and it makes it worse. So I think if they can get some time to kind of calm down, they'll find that space again.
Yeah, I think so. It was like
and
Julian says.
And yes, I totally agree. Swapping Connor and Ehlers in those spots would be something I'd love to see, just for that reason, right? We could get a little bit more creativity out of it, and it still opens up Connor for that shot.
And Julian kind of says it here. The PP was bound to go into a slump, but this is where all the inconsistent 5-on-5 play can cost them. And this is what I'm kind of seeing as well. Coming out of this break, it has been a little unsteady at 5-on-5. They've been able to get through, sneaking in some late comebacks and winning some games in overtime and shootout. And I think, and I like this, and it was late, but Scott O'Neill made the adjustment we have been talking about that we'd prefer. Now, I didn't love the winger choice, but the one thing I've kind of seen is I feel like that Ehlers, Vlad, Perfetti group has looked a little bit more like the previous version than the one that got hot before the break, in the sense that they're not creating sustained offensive zone time. They're really taking advantage of teams on transition and off rushes the other way, and that's just not a way you're going to be successful come playoff time. So we saw him. He went to the late switch with Lowry, Ehlers, and Appleton. Don't really understand Appleton being in that spot if you're trying to chase offense. That would be like the one tweak I'd move off there. I want to see more Ehlers and Lowry. And the other tweak was Vlad, Nino, Perfetti, which is if they go get a top six winger, I think that's where you end up with your third line. So it was interesting to see Arneal pull that out today in the middle of 11-game win streak. Clearly, it's still on his mind, which is something I'm comfortable seeing. I want to see where it goes the rest of the weekend here, but I know you've been big on wanting to see that shift. Are you now more comfortable with the idea that Scott Arneal might go back there?
I need to see him start a game with it before I'm going to be comfortable. I think we need Lowry up with Ehlers on that line. And we've seen them work together for that 4-game, 5-game stretch that they had. And man, they click. They understand where each other are on the ice. Lowry gives Ehlers that blanket behind him to go out and do a little bit more up front. And like for all the great things Cole Perfetti does, and I'm the biggest Cole Perfetti fan, he's just not a fast skater, right? That speed just isn't in his game, and it's a little tough with him and Ehlers. So if you go out and you get a top 6 winger that can play with Ehlers and Lowry, which again, a lot easier to find at the deadline, that's going to give you so much more flexibility. But I need to see Scott Arneal start a game with Lowry on that second line with Nikolai Ehlers, because we've seen him do this a couple times in the past. We've seen him a few times make a 5-10 minute change in the third period of games and go right back to old reliable afterwards. So I need to see him start a game with it.
And I'm going to shout out a point from Pierogies 11 over on Twitch here. This was their takeaway tonight. Jets play a big boy lineup tonight and look soft. 0 meat on their D or fourth line. Not going to last in the playoffs. And this is one aspect where I prefer the Lowry Ehlers group and the Perfetti Nino setup is when we're talking about the Vlad line not containing sustained offense in the offensive zone, and they're really taking advantage of teams on fast breaks and off the rush on odd man chances. I do think some of that is the fact that those guys are 3 guys you can lean on and create turnovers off of. And that's where I think adding a guy like Adam Lowry to Nikolai Ehlers' game, who we saw, it was only 4 games. It was a small sample size, but he really seemed to open up the ice and open up space for a guy like Ehlers, where Nick Ehlers with space is when Nick Ehlers is going to be dangerous. That big body creates that presence for him. And then on Perfetti's side of things, we saw him and Nino really work off that cycle game together. And Nino being able to kind of clear a pathway and lean on guys that's going to create some openings for Cole Perfetti out of the corner and stuff. I think if you were to make that shift, that size element becomes a little bit easier to maintain for the Jets in their top 9.
Yep.
I mean, we've talked for a while that looking for some mobile beef on the back end is definitely something this team should be doing. And the idea of this fourth line getting better with one of those upgrades and bumping guys down, I think that all is fluid. But that is an aspect where I do prefer this idea of Ehlers and Lowry and going to get a top 6 winger and then having a guy like Vlad, Nino, Perfetti as your third line. Appleton falls to the 4th, and you're looking at something like Gusser Kupari centering Iafallo and Appleton. I just think you create more offense down your lineup, but also you have that size element throughout the lineup as well come playoffs when the grind gets tougher. That's just kind of where I'm at with that switch, and we saw him go to it. I want to see him keep trying that out because I do think it opens up some opportunities for Winnipeg if they aren't able to go find a 2C at this deadline.
So I've got 2 thoughts. First, what is preventing Arneal from already playing Lowry in that spot when we've seen it work? We know that he works well on that third line all year, but it just why? Like I don't understand why it's not tried more. I don't get it.
I told you 2 games ago. It's because that other line got hot, but now that they're struggling, he pulled the trigger quicker than he has in the past. We aren't seeing him sit on his hands. Let's just see where it goes from him because at least he is willing to go there.
Because that changes like we've talked about, that changes the deadline look completely. We've been looking at centers. 100%. We've been looking at a lot of centers with term and D with term. We haven't spent a lot of time with wingers with term, right? So it'll be interesting to see if that's the route they end up going. And the second thing is everybody hungry tonight? You talked about beef. Pierogies mentioned meat on the broadcast. They talked about a lot of meat coming together. There wasn't enough meat on one of the shots. Everybody's real hungry tonight.
Hey, we're hungry for a cup here in Winnipeg, okay? And that's what this team's given us the ability to feel like. So we're going to have those conversations. Another goal from Neil Pionk tonight comes off a great forecheck from Alex Iafallo. Kupari ends up finding him, and it's an old knuckle puck special. The only way to beat UC Soros on this night. And I'm seeing a lot of talk about the Neil Pionk contract. Choices TK said Pionk another goal with a bunch of money signs. Um, Jay Pix said biggest takeaway, give for a blank check. I know he's just trolling me. Sarge is saying the same. But this all is taking me somewhere I wanted to discuss. This afternoon or this morning, I put out a thread on Twitter and I wanted to bring it here because I do think this is a conversation that could potentially help the Jets when it comes to no trade clauses and no move clauses. We know that that's an issue, and it's always going to come up around this time. And one thing I think as a market we under talk about, I think we as a podcast under talk about, I think it's under talked about nationally, is the Winnipeg Jets have done a very, very good job in the history of this franchise of bringing in quality vets, and those vets leaving Winnipeg, getting a contract that's much bigger than they're worth, and then those contracts being littered around the league and talked about as some of the worst value deals in the NHL. I think that's the sales pitch. Is if you look at it, I'll name some just to go here. Jacob Trouba was obviously seen as a big bona fide top right-handed D-man. Gets an 8x8 and hasn't been worth that deal at all.
Yep.
Ben Sherratt masqueraded as a top 4 left-handed D beside Dustin Byfuglien and got 4 years of term, $19 million. He isn't worth that deal. Andrew Kopp fits this dynamic. Pierre-Luc Dubois was always talked about as this 80-point center. The shine was falling off. He had a big year with Kyle Connor. Gets the big 8.5 deal, and it's traded for a backup or a goalie the next year. Andrew Ladd, the big miss when the Jets were focused on him, and glad that didn't happen, and it opened up some doors for keeping Buff around. Went on and got overpaid and made a great career for himself. And the list is lengthy at this point that agents and teams, I feel, are agents and players are actually doing themselves a disservice. This team, despite their first round flaws, is consistently a playoff team. That's important for guys going into free agency. There's consistent opportunity in quality spots as it has gotten guys paid, and there's consistent track record of guys getting more value than they're worth after leaving Winnipeg. And I look at Neil Pionk and I see the hype in the chat, and I can't help but say him and Mason Appleton are the two guys on this current team that fit that archetype, that are going to get overpaid in free agency, and you want to be the ones avoiding that. As much as I see that talk in the group, you don't want to be having those contracts that we're now talking about and being thankful that we moved on from. And those two, Neil Pionk and Mason Appleton, are very easily the two the Winnipeg Jets have to avoid. Z Partel points out here, Eakin was one of them, and he was definitely the most egregious. I was watching Cody Eakin before the Jets traded for him. I thought his career was over. Somehow he ended up playing 2C for a bit and cashed in another $4.5 million over 2 years. So just an angle I want people to think about. And when we're having that Pionk combo, I mean, the Jets are going to do it and we're going to be upset about it. But I think the Jets have done a really good job of getting the most out of guys that are flawed players and not drivers, seeing them get paid elsewhere and backfilling. And that's where I'm at with both Pionk and Appleton. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have to let someone else make the mistake on Pionk. And again, it's not because he's a bad guy, a bad player. It's none of those things. It's just that the value isn't going to be there. And we can't be the team that makes that mistake if we're going to stay competitive. If this is going to be a window of time that we're going to keep trying to push for deep playoff runs to try to get that Stanley Cup banner, especially in a world where that cap is going to be rising like crazy, we have to be smart with it. We can't be a retirement home for players. We can't be, just handing out deals for production that isn't going to come. It's such a classic mistake that we have to have learned from by now. God, I hope we've learned from by now.
Yeah, and our chat's naming some of them that I didn't name. Al Camino names Brandon Tanev, who I see as like the Mason Appleton comp. Brandon Tanev, as a fourth line energy guy, was able to secure 6 years of term and 3.5 mil per year because he played beside Adam Lowry and Andrew Kopp. And I'm looking at Mason Appleton as the exact same example of that. John Chan says, didn't Kevin Hayes also receive a nice deal after leaving Winnipeg? Which, yeah, over $7 million for 7 years. Philly ended up having to eat half as it went on just to move off that money. Lucas Strapp asks if we have a keg in Winnipeg, and yes, we do.
We do.
The food talk is going, Mikey, ever since you
Telling you,
brought that
everybody's
up.
hungry.
But yeah, that's just something to consider is think of all those guys you did enjoy in years past and what's happened since. And I think those two players are in that archetype. Apples is the guy to upgrade from, and Pionk is the guy not to. And I'll go back to Pierogies on Twitch because he had asked, is Salmonson a legit top 4 shutdown D-man? Has anyone watched Moose games? Elias Salmonson is having a really, really strong year, especially since coming back from injury. He's been a guy in Swedish's top league last year, became their number 1 D-man. And what he does well, he's got that size. He went through a growth spurt, and he's like 6'2" now. But he's one of those D-men that really fit today's NHL, where they're able to skate the puck up, they're able to move the puck up. And he was always a guy when I was looking at him in Sweden where draft eligible guys in those pro leagues in Europe don't put up big points. So he was a guy I was watching, and some of the stuff he'd create just wasn't getting put in playing with less talented offensive players out there. He was a guy that my thought was if he came to North America, the points would come just on his play style, and it looks to be coming there. And that's another aspect is if you go and do the Pionk DeMello deals, which they're going to do. I mean, we're talking about this and we're just putting out the info, but it's coming. You basically put yourself in that same spot you were in from 2019 to 2023, where you were cycling and overpaying expensive D-men, trying to find answers that ended up blocking your top prospects in Sandberg and Heinola. And one of them is now not going to be a Jet and hasn't developed because there was no pathway. I don't want to see you get in the middle of Elias Salmonson and what he can mean to this team on a cheap contract through this core and through this window. So that's just one thing to be cognizant of.
Yep, 100%. You don't want to take up that spot when he is so close to being ready for the Jets. Yeah, it's time. I keep saying it. I think Pionk will find a much better deal out on the open market, even if it's going to be a year, a year or two difference in terms of the term. I think he's gonna be. I think he'll be real happy out on the open market. So.
Z Bartel over on Twitch says Salmonson is the most exciting of any of those prospects. And I agree. I think Salmonson's a step ahead as their number 1 prospect. I've been saying that since training camp.
Yep.
If the Jets were able to get a legitimate top 4 out of that second round pick, right-handed D, we haven't seen them draft and develop one since Trouba. Like, that would be huge for the org. And he does have a lot of the elements you want to see from a young defenseman playing in his first year in North America. He's a player to be excited about here. He's the one prospect I'm hoping they get through this deadline with. If they trade him for a big ad, the now means more to me. But he's the one guy I'm hoping we sneak through with. They have so many forward prospects that they're going to have to move off of.
Yep.
That's the guy for me.
The other part too that gives me a little bit of help or a little bit of hope is that Salmonson is their draft pick, right? And we know that Chevy loves his guys more so than the free agents they sign, more so than the guys they trade for. Their draft picks are on a different tier in terms of that. And you don't want to clog up that spot from your guy that you drafted, that you've developed. So, Pionk's been great that he's been here. It's time to, there's no harm in letting him walk this year.
Big Papa sums up. He's a big Swedish defenseman. He will be good. And if there's a country I want to trust a defenseman from, Sweden's done a pretty damn good job of developing NHL defensemen out of that country. Z Bartel says he's got a mix of that traditional things that scouts love and a little bit of nasty. And man, he can move the puck. He's that modern day defenseman that I think all aspects of fandom will find things to appreciate in his game. I mean, he's no stranger to mixing it up and taking some suspensions as well, right? Like, he brings you a lot of the elements that get everybody excited. Let's go to B Sarge 8 says, why not play Comrie last night against the depleted Sens squad and 37 tonight? I understand the Preds haven't been great, but these divisional games usually tend to be close. What's your thoughts, Mikey?
Back-to-backs are always kind of interesting to look at the psychology behind when you want to play your starter, right? Do you play him on the first game where you're going to be more fresh, or do you play him in the second game to give, the tired guys more of a chance? We've seen about 90% of the time, if not even higher, with Scott Arniel, he likes to play the starter in the first game. He likes to give Hellebuck the best chance at getting the win overall in that too. I think they kind of look at most back-to-backs as a split. They may never say that publicly, right? They'll never say they're planning on, taking a loss somewhere, but I would assume that when they're looking at the schedule and they're kind of mapping things out, they're expecting a split at best on back-to-backs. So you load up in the first game. Me personally, I've always liked the idea of giving your starter the second game to try to give the tired guys more of an opportunity to win, especially if your starter is, God mode Connor Hellebuck. But I don't hate it in the first game, especially if you're trying to, keep Hellebuck's stats padded.
Yeah, for he didn't know if he's played on a team that struggles to score as much as this. I just think we're overlooking. I think we're overlooking the goaltending thing on a night that Eric Comrie was good, man. It
Yep.
was a 2-1 hockey game. The Jets couldn't score on UC Soros.
Yeah, he wasn't the reason they lost.
Combo.
Yeah, he didn't. He
Yeah.
wasn't the reason they lost. Comrie has not been the reason they lost. I don't know if any of the losses you can really pin on him as going, oh man, he had a terrible game and blew it up. He, like you said, he may want that first goal back, but he more than made up for it with 2 or 3 just absolutely robberies. So
He was great.
Comrie's been
was great.
fantastic. I had no issue with his game again tonight.
And 2 other things to consider here. I mean, Kevin Kowalik says he had a 931 tonight. Yes, it's a divisional game. It's a divisional game with a 40-point differential in the standings.
Yeah.
Coming into tonight.
They may as well be in the Pacific.
And the other thing about this, if you're chasing points and chasing a wildcard spot, I get getting aggressive, like the way you like to do it. I get that. This is the first place team by multiple points at this point.
Yep.
Play Hellebuck in that first game, take the 2 points, and just keep building. Just keep securing points for that first round home ice. There's no need to get cute with it. I don't see a reason
And
to
again,
get cute with this one.
Comrie didn't cost them the game. Switching the goalies wouldn't have made, much of a difference when the Jets aren't, scoring more than 1 to 2 goals.
Yeah. Just gonna let you know we're trying to get through without tech difficulties, but I got a warning on my screen that my internet connection is unstable. We'll try and power through. A little frustrated with tech this week, but we keep going. Another question over on Twitch. Z Bartel, do you think Stan is cemented as the number 5? And yeah, we keep
Yes.
talking about it. We keep saying it. I think today was another example where you should come to the honest reality that in Winnipeg, the coaching staff has 5D locked into this lineup. Colin Miller comes out on the strong side, right side. Logan Stanley moves over to his offhand to get Hayden Fleury in this game. Every single game Logan Stanley's been healthy, he's played. He has not worn a healthy scratch yet. They have him playing both sides. Despite how the fan base, I'm pretty sure every media outlet in the city at this point, great podcasts like the PDO cast. Dimitri's been all over the Jets and what's going on here. I'd recommend listening. Great segment on Dylan Sandberg's emergence today. Nice to see that love. The Athletic Hockey Show talking about clearly Jets fans want him out of the lineup, though the take after it was they want Sandberg demoted, which doesn't make any sense. He's their second best defenseman. It is clear and obvious to virtually everyone but the team that is an issue. And we're just going to have to power through. Realistically, it's going to take 2 D ads to not see him in the lineup.
Yeah, it would take 2 D ads, and at least one of them needs to be a very large defenseman that can also skate and move the puck, because it's what's keeping him in the lineup. And shout out to Z Bartel. Thanks for being a first time chatter and joining us here. Unfortunately, the thing with Stanley, it's the size. Scott O'Neill has said it unequivocally a couple times in both post and pregame pressers. He likes the size that Stanley brings on that back end. He wants it there. Mike Friesen had pointed out again in the letter that he wrote to us that they want that size kind of on all three pairs. And until they get a replacement that is both bigger and better than Stanley, he's going to keep playing in that spot. Because even if they get a player that is, quote unquote, better than him, that plays in that number 5 spot, he's not coming out if they don't also bring the size. So Chevy really has to go out and find a very specific type of player to take that toy away from Scott O'Neill.
Basically, to sum it up, yeah, you need to see like the Hackenberg situation from Moneyball, where Chevy goes down to the coach's office and says, "Hey, you can't play him today. We just traded him."
Yep.
It's funny. The Jets see him as a unicorn / unique player in a completely different way than the rest of us see him as a unique unicorn. I mean, we're watching a meme at this point, if we're just being real, but this is what they've decided. This is where you're going.
Yep.
Hopefully we see him added onto a deal. Speaking of deals, again, we're in trade season, so we're getting different rumors, different rumblings, different analysts connecting the Jets places. And I got to say, we kind of talked about the Sportsnet broadcast last game and not really enjoying the intermission segment. Craig Button, you are heard. You are seen, my man. That is the type of stuff I want to hear from analysts when they're talking about the Jets deadline. If you missed it, Craig Button was asked by Dan Robertson, if the Jets should not maybe go fishing for some help to not disrupt the chemistry. An argument that I've been getting pushback on social media quite a bit as well. And I understand how we become prisoners of the moment with this thing. And all I'm going to say moving forward is I'm going to post the Craig Button clip anytime it comes up. Craig Button nailed it. And you've heard me talk about this if you've been listening to this show. NHL players are as competitive as they come. Any pro athlete to get to that level is a competitive motherfucker at a level that we cannot relate to. You have to be the best 1% and higher even in a sport like that. And Craig Button said, like, it's absolutely rubbish, the idea that you shouldn't you should worry about the chemistry. He's like, no one's looking to bring in an asshole. Everyone's looking for character, but you have holes. You have spots where you can get upgrades, and the players expect it, Craig Button said. He's not wrong. Players will know if there's a big piece walking into that room that, holy shit, we just got some big help. So I love to hear that from Craig Button. I really liked who he threw out there with some of this stuff that's coming out. He was talking Ricard Raquel. I missed the first intermission segment, but from what I understand, he was talking Ricard Raquel. And if you're looking for term, which it seems like the Jets are, you're looking for some scoring, you're looking for a top 6, mid 6 help, that guy checks off a lot of those boxes. He was just at the Four Nations as well.
Yeah, he's the guy that I've kind of had an eye on for years. He scores in bunches when he does. He fits a lot of what they'd be looking for in that spot. And yes, on Button's comments specifically, finally somebody points it out on the national media like that, because, like you said, it really frustrates me when we get a lot of no, we can't shake anything up, we can't mess with chemistry, we can't bring anybody in, it's going to ruin all of it. And I can understand a little bit where we're still a little. I think we might be a little skittish, a little hurt still from all of the rumors and things leaking out about, the Jets locker room is toxic. The Jets locker room is fighting. They had to bring Matt Hendricks in again to try to save the locker room chemistry. So I think people maybe have a little bit of that left over in them, right? So I can get it a bit, but we have to start seeing this not as somebody coming in and shaking it all up and blowing it all up and changing everything. Whoever they're bringing in, these are reinforcements. These are extra bodies for the guys that you love, for the guys that you've been cheering for the last few years, right? This is a good thing. They are bringing them help on a night like tonight, where it is back to back, where they're tired and they're beat up. Wouldn't it have been great to have a little extra offensive help? another big name to help spread those minutes around to help, even out that load. So it's, it's going to be okay. I promise whoever that Chevy brings in isn't going to be a locker room cancer. They're not going to, they're not going to do something ridiculous and crazy like that. We're going to be all right. So yeah, I loved it. I loved Craig Button pulling out the flamethrower and just torching that argument.
It was enjoyable for me, that's for sure. And what's interesting about Raquel too, and I had this pointed out to me, and something I didn't actually realize as well is Sil over on Twitch says some C minutes too this year, and would love to trade Barlow plus for Raquel, and that's kind of the avenue and the price point I'd be interested in as well as using Colby Barlow there. He kind of fits that Vlad mold where he's not really a natural center. He is a winger. I think Vlad is better as a winger than a center as well. But he is someone that's taken hundreds and hundreds of draws in the NHL. He's played a little bit of center when they've needed. So he kind of gives you that versatility in a pinch. And I think that the Jets would like something like that. We've kind of heard them talking about, or a lot of the rumors talking about, they'd love an upgraded Vlad type, or just to have that flexibility with the lineup. And this is the time to go for things like that. Button brought, as in Ehlers We Trust says, Button was with a flamethrower.
Yep.
And I think people needed to hear that message from somebody on a broadcast rather than no, this team's good enough. I think this team is clearly showing and giving you reasons to believe in it. I think this team, if they come first and they get Vancouver or Calgary, which it's looking like, is going to win round one this year. Give me that matchup all day.
Oh, yeah.
After that matchup without ads, I'm taking whoever they're playing. That's just me being blunt about it.
Yep.
There's places to add. You've banked up the cap space. You have the assets. You have a first place team. If not now, when? If not now, when?
Yep. This is it. This is the time. There's other years where you look at it and go, you don't want to go too heavy in because you can't mortgage the future. Because there's always that trepidation. You shouldn't have any of that trepidation right now. You have a first place team. They are first in so many categories. They are getting historic level play at multiple positions. This is the time. You have cap space. You have capital to go out and make the trades. Like you said, if not now, when?
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. So let's let's temper the vibes though, because we got a Darren Dreger piece today. Oh, the Jets had some features on the Insiders on TSN, and we're all very well aware that Dreger is the Winnipeg Jets management's preferred mouthpiece on a lot of things. So ears perk up anytime that is going on. And so the hit starts off with Pierre LeBrun talking about the Montreal Canadiens and their two rentals that we're talking about, as you are very well familiar with, Jake Evans and Yoel Armia. And LeBrun connects the Jets to both. And Darren Dreger proceeds to go on with his Jets tidbits, and he starts hyping up Yoel Armia, and he was a former Jet, and talk about a guy that could fill in the depth. And I think he's a fine depth player, don't get me wrong. But the Jets have like 7 to 8 good defined depth players at this point.
Yeah.
And then Dreger really tries to sell the idea that if someone gets hurt, Yoel Armia could be a top 6 forward. Maybe on a rebuilding team, not on a team that's wanting to win a Stanley Cup. And then he proceeded to talk about the idea that the Jets are going to be looking for some mid-6 depth and looking for the right fit, not big name. And he went on to talk about maybe adding to the decor. What's your interpretation of what Darren Dreger had to say today?
I had to multiple times pinch myself and throw cold water on my face because I thought I was having a nightmare. Because this is my exact nightmare. This is the exact thing I've been terrified of since the first time Dreger came out and told us this. So yeah, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. 31-year-old Joel Armia is not a top 6 anything. I can tell you because I watch Habs games, unfortunately. And they're not bringing Jake Evans over. So yeah, sure, you can do that if you want to upgrade your fourth line. Absolutely. Great. Joel Armia is exactly the type of fourth line player that you want with Alex Iafallo. Absolutely. Great. Sure. You can have the best fourth line in the league. However, that does nothing to upgrade your second line or your third line. He cannot play in your top 6. He's fine with the puck, but he has absolutely no offensive instincts. As soon as he crosses over the offensive blue line, he forgets what sport he's playing and just kind of, lets go of the puck and starts staring around. It's real frustrating. He's a puck magnet, but it's a magnet where he can't do anything with it. It's just stuck to him. So no, Joel Armia is not the answer, Darren Dreger. And yeah, I thought I was having a nightmare.
And Turd beats me to the punch because I'm going to settle you down here. I'm going to settle the audience down here. One thing to keep in mind here, especially when we're talking about the insider level of the NHL game, I wouldn't describe these people as true journalists. I would describe them as harbingers of information and their strategic plans at this point. Let me paint a picture for you. I think Kevin Cheveldayoff's using Darren Dreger to try and suggest he doesn't like where the bidding wars or the offers are at on some of his targets right now. We know Kevin Cheveldayoff does not like to overpay. And this should be a year that, hey, if you got to overpay a little bit from your evaluation to get something done, I think you should be willing to. I think he's using Darren Dreger to send a message to other teams right now as a leveraging tactic. I mean, we've heard, I want to say before the Stastny deal, once the Stone smoke had slowed down, that it was like, oh, it's going to be likely depth. And then Paul Stastny comes into town. After getting Monahan last year, it was like, oh, it's going to be mostly depth. And then they took a swing at Tyler Toffoli. Sometimes it's important to look at the insiders and try and piece together who's benefiting from this info, why would they want it out? And that's my theory on Darren Dreger's report today.
So we're essentially hoping that it's more House of Cards and less Real Housewives.
It's all about, as Choices says here, insiders are all about relationships and what you want them to know, not the full story. I think it's a public leverage play. I think they're swinging.
God, I hope you're right.
We do not hear Colby Barlow's name out there as available if they're chasing depth, because depth isn't costing Colby Barlow.
Very
Just,
true.
One of those things you gotta pick the pieces of information that are coming out and try and figure out the puzzle, and that's where I'm lying on the puzzle right now.
Oh man, if there's a Paul Stastny out there, this is the time to go find it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, did we play against him today?
Ooh, ROR.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after the phone lines here. I heard a call come through.
The caller did not want to wait. So phone lines are open, everybody. Just so you know, 1-204-800-0409. It's a good time. Give us a call.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly. Actually, two interesting players today. We've talked about moments at points this year. So it sounds like Barry Trotz is gonna essentially give Ryan O'Reilly a no trade clause because the way he just signed him, things obviously fell off the map, but he respects the player. That's a guy, obviously the foot speed's not what it once was. So I had some people reach out with kind of the Sean Monahan concerns. And I'm going to kind of make a pitch for Ryan O'Reilly. Yeah, the foot speed's not there, but this is one of those true gamers in the NHL. And I'll say this, Nashville was, and we've talked about it, I wasn't convinced Nashville was going to take the big step this year because they went and spent a ton of money on older, slower scorers. And their system and what made them so tough to play against last year was they just had a bunch of dogs on the forecheck that just suffocated you. And Ryan O'Reilly still played up to that pace last year. He's won a cup, which I've mentioned. I would like to get a ring around this room, especially this core, in case it goes wobbly at playoff time. Somebody that could settle things down. It's safe to say I think Ryan O'Reilly is probably the best center ad from what we know publicly potentially available. And I liked quite a bit of what I saw today from him.
Yeah, he looked great, and especially, can you imagine him on a line with Cole Perfetti, right? Two guys that maybe don't have the foot speed exactly, but their vision and their hockey IQ off the charts. That would be a fun line to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Another guy we've kind of talked about, or we briefly discussed him, I want to say in December, that I find interesting, especially if you go the Lowry Ehlers route. I think it only works with this route, though maybe he fits with Ehlers, is that Tommy Novak can skate a bit, can finish a bit, not really defensively reliable, should not be expensive, and I think he's a very interesting stylistic fit between a Nino Niederreiter and a Cole Perfetti.
That's
if you're
interesting.
willing to go this route.
I hadn't considered Novak. So you've got 2 more years still after this one. He's in year 1 of 3.
I think he's a pretty flawed player. Like, there's definitely downsides to it. But if you're looking for a top 9 ad that adds some speed, could score a bit more,
Yep.
and could fit between two solid players like a Perfetti and and give them that speed element. Kind of like we saw Rasmus Kupari play with that line for a bit, right?
Yep.
When we got the Ehlers Lowry thing. And Kupari looked generally pretty good with that group because he had the speed to kind of stretch that group up. I'm kind of looking at as Tommy Novak as a slightly slower Rasmus Kupari that could actually finish.
Yep.
And it was just something I wondered about watching the game today.
That's an interesting one. That's exactly their type of player as well. That's interesting. I hadn't considered Novak.
Sil says, at that point, I am just promoting Lowry and upgrading the bottom 6. And I think that's what you're doing here.
Yes, that's
You're
what we're doing.
using Adam Lowry with Nick Ehlers as your second line. You're going to go spend some assets on a scoring winger, and then you're looking at your third line as something like Novak, Perfetti, Nino, and then you got Vlad, Iafallo, Appleton as your fourth. And all of a sudden, where's the holes?
Yeah,
Where's the holes in that top 9?
that is a mean top 9, and it gives you still a lot of flexibility in terms of the cap.
As Julian points out, yep, that's the guy that scored the game winner tonight too,
Yep.
right, on that power play backdoor. So that was an interesting one I was paying attention today. I will say I'm just not a big Luke Shen guy. I don't think he answers the problems on the back end.
No, I want nothing to do with the Shen brothers. I'm good. Pass. That's a hard pass.
Let's keep it going and relay some content off of what some of the bigger networks are talking about. What's his name? Jason Bukala. He's been all over Jets content this week, and especially when we're talking some of the prospect stuff. That's an area he tries to focus on. I'm very, very curious to see the response to this because it wasn't very popular on the old social media. I'm trying to pull up the poll here, but Jason Bukala went on Kipper and Bourne today and was talking about Colton Parayko and how he feels like he underrated him. And the more he's watched him, he sees a big offensive 5-on-5 defenseman. And, he fits the mobile meat. The defensive game is slipping. We saw him beside Josh Morrissey, but he pitched a trade from Winnipeg to St. Louis. And I want to get your thoughts. The trade was Cole Perfetti. It was a 2025 first, and it was a 5th-round pick for 5 years of Colton Parayko, unretained at $6.5 million.
He got laughed off of the internet with that, right? Right? Because that's fucking ridiculous. That's a hard pass. That is absolute. That's a complete non-starter. No nine yet niente. I don't know how many other ways. No, fucking no.
So I ran a poll with that trade, and the answer options were yes, he's the answer, no thanks, or nervous but would try it. No thanks got 74%, which means 26% were down. And I'll play devil's advocate just to make the case and explain why it would potentially go there. I do think that if you're looking at value and kind of where Parayko's games trended, I think that's expensive. And I would be very worried about the future value. But let's play devil's advocate and at least make the pitch. The thing we know, top 4, top pair, right-handed D, are the hardest asset to acquire in the NHL, which means the price to get one is elevated. I think he's more of a 3 or a 4 at this stage.
Yep.
But the perception is that he's a top pair, which is going to drive up the value. He's got some term, though I think the back end of the term is problematic, as I've mentioned. But that is, if you look at the marketplace of the NHL, I don't think he's that far off on what a Colton Parayko trade would cost if you really break down where the perception versus where his game is trending. And if it worked, I mean, that is a big answer on the top pair beside Josh Morrissey. It gives you Dylan DeMello on the third pair to try and stabilize Logan Stanley. I would like even to spend like a late pick on like a Brian Dumoulin at that point. But I'm just giving you the opposite side of why something like that, why the Jets might take a risk like that, and why that price doesn't seem too out of line with where the market is for me.
You can't take that big of a piece off the main roster during this run and be on a gamble, on a risk still because Parayko is not a sure thing on that top pair. Like the perception may be out there, and St. Louis may want that type of value for him, but we know for a fact he's not going to be locking down that spot guaranteed for the next 5 years or whatever. So I can understand them wanting it, and maybe they'll get it from a team, but no. And I liked like the idea of bringing in Parayko, but not at that price. No, I'm so hard out on that one.
Over on Twitch, still says I'd rather pony up for Dobson, which is an interesting one. And Harjivana Parwana says the exact same thing over on YouTube. If Fetz is gone, it's for Noah Dobson in the offseason. Frosty Winnipeg's talking about the idea of bringing Boone Jenner over, but knows Columbus won't trade him. They're oddly in that mix still.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I just found that to be an eye-opening offer and one that I could see how you arrive at it. Very interesting. Very interesting.
What do you think about the fact that they've said on the broadcast that it sounds more like the Jets are looking for the long term or the ad with some term on it to be at forward and the pieces on the back end to be more of the rental depth? Are you buying into that as the case? Because we spend a lot of time looking at D with term, but it feels like they might not be looking in that direction.
Oh, I think it tracks perfectly because they're looking for help in that top 6 or top 9, depending on how you construct it.
Some
And they're
Ehlers
looking
insurance?
to get bingo. They're looking to get ahead of the Nick Ehlers summer, and with contracts coming up on the back end. If you look at this, how the Jets are looking at this, I think it makes sense with what they got planned.
Interesting. Very interesting. Big Papa, I totally agree. Find me a 50% retained Seth Jones.
I don't think he's waiving for Canada, unfortunately.
No, hey?
I don't think he's waiving. And at 50%, he's not costing a quarter of the price. Big Papa's
No, at 50%.
dreaming.
Yeah.
Dreaming on that one. Seth Jones at 50% is costing you an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
Just so you're aware. But does name some of the wing targets I do like in. We saw Bjorkstrand. Rumors are he's available.
Yep.
We've touched on him.
Sign me up.
Bring me the Bjork. Yeah, bring me the Bjork to play with Ehlers and Lowry.
Tuck.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting week.
Friday can't get here soon enough.
And all I'm going to keep preaching, patience is a virtue. It's going to come. Something's coming. They're not sitting this one out. They're absolutely not. M3 RP24 with an interesting comp here and one I kind of like. Am I wrong saying ROR feels like he'd be a similar fit to how Statsny fit here? And I do like that vibe a lot.
Yep.
And you're getting 2 years of it at 4.5 mil. That does have that feel to me.
Yeah, it feels very, very similar. He would fit a lot of those. He would fill a lot of the holes that they've got there. Man, it's got to happen. Something big's got to happen. They need it.
Harjivana has another interesting take here on a player that he thinks the Jets might have missed on. Shit, dude, you know who the Jets should have looked at? Morgan Frost. He really did not cost much from Calgary. And he's always been a player I thought would do a little bit better once he leaves Philly. Like, there's some offensive flair there that seemed untapped. But the way I would look at that is I think the Jets have shown that they're in a position where it's harder for them to take bets this year. They need certainty. This team needs guys that are going to be impact players during this stretch.
Yeah, we're at that spot now where it's time to go at it. So, yeah, they maybe want a little bit more of a sure thing, but if they can find a reclamation project on the cheap, I could also see it happening.
Yeah. Holy, someone's pissed on me on Twitter for no reason. What else is new? Where else do you want to go tonight here, Mikey? I'm running out of here. Oh, Ethan KPM brings up Alexiak, Jamie Alexiak. And there was an interesting trade proposal in Murat's article. He was taking fan trade offers and then going and talking to agents and league execs. And there was one trade offer that involved Alexiak and Jared McCann that the agents and the execs all thought like neither team would say no. The Jets might add a conditional pick just to get it over the top. Let's see what the crowd and what you think about this one. 2025 first, Brad Lambert, Logan Stanley, and a conditional third based on the Jets making it to the Western Conference Finals for Jamie Oleksiak and Jared McCann.
Alexiak and McCann. Yeah. I'm in. That's a tough one, but I think I might be in. I think
You have to.
I think the
You
addition
have
by
to.
subtraction is huge. The upgrade and the McCann part of it is really what kind of pushes it over for me. Yeah, I'm in on that one.
He's one of their best players, and Brad Lambert might never become Jared McCann. Let's be honest, he probably won't.
No, yeah, that would be if he does, then that's incredible. The Jets are super fucking lucky, but we don't have time to wait to find out. So Jared McCann is already Jared McCann. So I'll take the sure thing right now over the lottery ticket later. Dan leaving and getting upgraded to Oleksiak is fine. That's great. Like I don't. Now does like from the Jet side of it, yes, absolutely sold. Do you think Seattle does it?
I do think that's close, and I do think that could get it done.
Especially with the conditional third.
Especially with the conditional, and Brad Lambert's still a top-end prospect. A first-round pick's a big asset.
Yep.
I think that's a very easy one to sell in Seattle that, hey, things haven't worked out. We're looking to start looking towards the future. We got 2 premium assets to do it, and
Call
we
it a
backfilled
retool.
Jamie Oleksiak
Yep.
with the fake version that's like only a couple years younger than him at this point.
Yep.
I think you could really easily sell that, and obviously that city will be familiar with Brad Lambert from his pop in that short period of time with the Thunderbirds.
Yep.
If you can get that done, I think that's a great one.
Yeah.
I think you address both of your needs. You get a real impact top 6 forward in Jared McCann, who really minimizes that Ehlers loss if he walks. And that's something I've said I don't think the Jets can replace. In the now, you get significantly better. You shore up that third pair. Oleksiak Miller as a third pair, I'd be more than comfortable with. You add that size element that we've been talking about, clearing the net front, and you get a proven top-end scorer. I would be all in on that deal. I will Uber Brad Lambert to the airport.
Yeah, that's great. I'd make that trade all day. That's exactly the type of deal they need. And again, I love a one-stop shop.
Ethan KPM says Seattle needs an extra pick, though, and I do tend to think that there would be an extra pick in there, and that's where that conditional comes in.
Yep.
And it seems like this is one of the rare trades that everybody in our chat is going off about. Frosty Winnipeg wants them to just give him the Russian in the deal. Maybe you can do that, though I don't think he carries the same weight as a Brad Lambert. And at the end of the day, for a deal to get done, both teams are going to have to see a benefit. I did see a question earlier I wanted to talk about as we went into the deadline here. I think it was formerly asked about Walton and someone else being the keepers. Where was it here? I think it was Walton and Reshevsky being the keepers. I wouldn't look at that way. I think what you've seen from Walton in a D+1 year, he's given you like a first round value. You want to keep him in that system.
Yep.
As much as I like Kevin if he's asked about for an upgrade this year, I'm sorry, go ahead. And if Dmitry Reshevsky's asked about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep.
But if you can get through with Kieran Walton, I think you want to keep him there. And I think T. Konopoli says this. Only keeper is Salo. And again, I'll emphasize this. In my world, there's no such thing as an untouchable for the right ad. I don't think the Jets will go there. The fact that they're even talking Barlow is interesting to me.
Yeah.
It also tells me that if they're openly starting with Barlow as a prospect, they might bump off to the next guy on the list in Lambert or something to get a deal done. So I imagine that's where.
Yep, totally agree.
Sidebar from Old Drex for fun. Let's do some napkin math. Does Ovi Tire break the goals record in Winnipeg March 25th? So what are we at here now? I got cheap seats early in the year. After that, he was 13 away in 14 games. I think he was pacing where we were going to have an opportunity to potentially see it before that injury. I think it's just gonna be a little too much, a little too soon. unless he puts up like another Hattie, which never right off Ovi. I think that injury is going to push that record into potentially early next year now.
Let's see. How many is he back right now?
So, sorry to formally, it was Frosty Winnipeg that said Walton, he, and Yeager are the only keepers. Salo already here. I would lessen that list by at least Kevin He personally.
So Ovi's 12 away right now.
Yeah, he would need 12 goals in I think it's 11 games now or 12 games.
Yeah.
It's a big ask. It's a big ask.
Hey,
Would've
you
been,
never know.
Cool.
Crazier things have happened, and he scores against us more than he scores against any other team in the National Hockey League. We are his favorite target. So if he comes in anywhere close, if he comes in like 4 goals away, it's happening. So make sure you've got tickets.
Needs 12 and 11 to tie, says Sills, and his prediction is he does it, but not in Winnipeg. Old Drex says, I think he's got it this year, probably not in Winnipeg, though I want to believe, God damn it. Also, as much as he scored on us, he hasn't faced God Mode Hellebuck, who is, 22, 2-1 in his last 25 games?
Yep.
Tico Napoli keeps hammering the door. So let's talk about this. Nick, Hathaway to help Lowry's knuckles out and some grit. Do you want to see Hathaway come into Winnipeg?
I'm gonna pass on that one there. That's gonna be a no for me.
I would be fine with picking somebody like that up for your fourth line if you address the other 2 holes, and it's a luxury item at that point. I can't say I would be focused there first, but if you were to get this Jared McCann Alexiak deal we just talked about, and Alexiak does bring some of that element as well, and you want to throw a mid-round pick at a Hathaway for that element and potentially have him around, I think that's fine. He's just not somebody.
I'm prioritizing.
Prioritizing, exactly. That's a good way to put it. Turd says as well, Alexiak can do that.
Sil says when Ovi comes, we'll play Comrie, not Helly. That way, it's he's for sure gonna get it.
Julian says, is Hathaway healthy? He didn't look good after that hit tonight. And Ethan KPM says Hathaway is dead. Clearly, there's a big hit. I gotta go watch now
Ooh, I'll
to
have to
even
check that out. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? We've been chatting away here. We're gonna have a few shows over the next week as we gear up to that deadline. We'll be back. What is it? Saturday night. We'll be doing a live show on Friday during the trade deadline. Let's go to the 3 stars tonight and get out of here for tonight.
All right, let's hit it. A guy that I don't give a lot of love to tonight, and on a night where the Jets for overall, it was a tough go for him. I'm gonna give it to David Gustafson. I'm gonna give it to Gus Bus, who keeps kind of having some pretty decent showings since he's been in the lineup. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens with a Morgan Barron return at some point, because I really like what Gustafson brings to that line. I like him at center with Kapari over on the wing. I think it's just a much better setup. So on a night where nobody was really all that great, I'm going to give it to Gus Bus at number 3. My number 2 star, Craig Button, with that fucking flamethrower of a segment. He gets a 2nd star tonight because, God damn it, he's right. It's fine. Shut up. Craig Button, you get number 2. And number 1 star, it was a losing effort. I'm going to keep it on the Jets side of things. I'll give it to Eric Comrie, who, again, just had some ridiculous saves, did everything he could to keep the Jets in it. But when they're only scoring 1 goal, he's not going to get the support. But I'll give it to Comrie because I'm a homer and screw the Predators.
Ethan, you might have missed it. The phone lines were open tonight, actually. Mikey made an announcement, and we had someone call in that left it alone. So we've got that figured out. We'll bring them back Saturday if you're looking to call in. We think we have that figured out. On my 3 stars, I'm going to go an honorary mention to Alex Iafallo, who creates that first goal, or the only goal for the Jets, with that forward check. I thought he had another strong showing in those regards, doing a lot of the little things right in a game where it's hard for me to pick with how much struggle we did see with a lot of the puck stuff. I'm going to go for my 3rd star. I think you nailed it, Craig Button, bringing a dose of reality to this trade conversation and telling it like it is, or how I see it anyways, on the broadcast. I'm going to go Eric Comrie as the second star keeps the Jets in this and gives them every opportunity to beat Saros and get back into this. And the Jets couldn't beat him. The Jets couldn't get back into it. UC Saros was my number one star in this one. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for being here. We'll be back Saturday to keep talking about where this team's going. Does the power play figure things out on Saturday? Are they a bit more crisp, not worrying about the streak and not playing 3 and 4? Is there new rumors that come up by then? I imagine there will be. We'll be back Saturday. We'll see you then. Thank you all for tuning in.
Right on. Good night, everybody.